4 miles only. Nothing suit, dude. Okay.
This
You guys
garbage
ready?
East Coast server.
I'm gonna ask them if they're ready. If you guys are ready.
Oh shit, is this an East Coast server?
Yeah, I'm hosting and I'm East
Fuck.
Coast.
Yeah, well. Can I
Control
just blame
Shift
Ping?
3.
Whatever.
Yeah, I know, right?
Should be able to change the hook.
Where are you at, Roger?
I don't know if I got it. Maybe.
Yeah, you got it. Just for the XPs, you know?
The XPs.
Alright, so we're on Lighthouse. Do you want to do the Orisa road? And then, yeah, Lucio's in. PQ and Baby, up to you guys.
Huh.
Should I have Mercy if you're gonna Farah?
Yeah, if you want to Pharaoh, we should probably Mercy.
Alright, so we have some consideration towards comp. I think I touched upon it in the other video.
PQ, if you plan to switch, just, you know, let us know so we can switch off Mercy if it makes.
Alright.
I'll try to do the same, rather than
Find speed boost.
and just kind of head to point. Yet.
So we're starting out with this comp. We are on Ilios Lighthouse. Excellent. Sapphire not uncommon of a pick here, really. Certainly, like, kind of like this is, once again. I'm gonna be rehashing some stuff you might have heard from the other video. For those who have watched it. But, this tank lineup in particular wants to set up on the point and then pretty much never leave, while your DPS comp doesn't want to do that. Both of them are mobile. They want to play around the point. Fire in particular really doesn't want to play on the point. She wants to hit them as they approach. Which your tank lineup, I mean, it can work on one of the chokes once you already have put yourself on point, but for the opening fight, at least, they want to get to point as quickly as possible and set up and stay there. For that reason, like, Lucio is okay. But after the initial fight, after the initial setup on point, Lucio kind of loses a lot of his usefulness. So, like, his amped heals are good, but speed boost, and the main draw to Lucio is, in fact, his speed boost, is kind of wasted in that Orisa really wants to stay in one place, behind her shield, and really, you don't need to move too much once that's done. There are some compositions where Lucio speed boost with Orisa is very powerful, particularly when you're against quad tank that's trying to rush you, or like other Reinhardt comps that are trying to rush your shield placement where you need to kite backwards, then the Lucio becomes useful, but you don't really anticipate it here. This is generally a dive favored map, albeit one that maybe you run like a soldier modified dive with, replacing one of the DPS, probably Tracer, so he can sit on the high ground, or McCree, and then he's pocketed by one of his supports. Sometimes it's Mercy, usually he's there to keep the Zenyatta safe. So most of this is kind of standard, if not maybe a little eclectic, where you have the tanks of one composition and the DPS of another, because no one's really sitting behind shield except for Orisa, and maybe Hog if he so chooses, but he's tanky enough to kind of almost play solo for the most part.
It makes.
Alright.
So what I'm looking for here is coordination.
And just so we really don't have like dedicated shot callers yet.
Oh, that's a shame. I'm looking for coordination between your Pharah and your Tracer. When the Pharah lands directs, it's the Tracer's job to follow up on them, for the most part. Normally it would also be your D.Va and Winston, who are traditionally in this sort of dive comp, to follow up on them, but barring that, only your Tracer really follows up on directs. I'm looking for that. I'm also looking for synergy between your Halt and your Hook, between your Orisa and your Hog. And basically your Mercy to just fly around everywhere. Lucio gets to do basically whatever he wants because he's not needed with the tanks and he's not really needed with the DPS. He can almost like frag out.
For this team, so feel free just to be sharing information, and I'll try to do the same as far as what you think the priority target should be, and or if you're getting Dove in the backline, healer specifically, because we're really not going to have much protection other than KMR just turning
Missed it again.
B and or if
Alright, so one last thing I want to touch up upon this comp is that we don't really have any ult combos. The closest thing we have is Orisa's Supercharger with maybe like Whole Hog, right? It acts as like a team-wide nano boost. Supercharger is very, very, very strong, but like we don't have an aimbot, we don't have a high noon, and we don't have a blade, which are the traditional like sort of I'm gonna nano boost someone in for it. Whole Hog will definitely work, but I'd like to see other ultimates besides it really go with the Supercharger if you're going to select this hero. Certainly Tracer can make use of it just as a normal person, and so can the Pharah, but you'd like to see some synergy. As for other places, Bomb isn't going to go with anything except maybe Halt, but you don't really expect anything to really go with this. With these people kind of on point, the Tracer wherever, and these two wherever, the Lucio ultimate can easily lose value in that he might get line of sighted just by his positioning and his DPS positioning. It's hard to imagine a situation where the entire team kind of gets the boost, unless they're all coming out of some choke trying to recap the point. Pharah has no protection for her barrage whatsoever. That is kind of an issue. Like normally you run like a diva who can matrix for her while she commits to her stationary barrage position. Another option would be Zarya. Zarya bubbles. Your only other option is maybe you beat into it to maybe protect her, but she can be bursted through that. Barrage in general is just not very good, and you don't tend to play around it, but it's worth considering. Back in the day, when Mercy still had instant res, it was only like a month ago, wasn't it? Where you'd barrage with Valkyrie up. So you barrage, and if she dies, you insta-Valkyrie and pick her back up, knowing that she's likely to die in the exchange. So let's continue.
you're getting Dove in the backline, healer specifically, because we're really not going to have much protection other than KMR just turning around on a road
dived. I got dived in the back.
Just let me know where you plan on like which direction you want to go in, and I will let you know if I'm speed boosting.
I feel like I'm going to be forced to make all these command decisions. Alright, so we're just going to go. We'll go through hallway and just kind of head to point.
Alright, hallway to point sounds reasonable.
Down high.
They're top left.
Alright, we're way up in the fucking air. That's good.
Tracer's on point right now.
You see how we set up on point? We have Baby Clog. I think that's our Tracer setting up. And we've already kind of established our win condition of the Pharah pokes them as they approach while our tanks are on point.
Monkey.
Unfortunately our Pharah is kind of
Kill monkey.
She's Alright, so like I understand why you're dropping down. The Pharah is dropping down to help out with this, but like when she's on ground level, a lot of her usefulness is kind of gone, to put it mildly. From this position, if they weren't interested in picking up your tanks, this is an easy first target, and Mercy is an easy second. Like they're both high value targets that have now come within range of a lot of people's abilities. It's not, and like Pharah's hitbox isn't that great. It's easy to get one clip by Tracer even with Mercy attention. Unfortunately, you do kind of have to fall down to hit to help your tanks, but maybe you could do so from an elevated position further away, spamming in here. This is kind of why the comp is a little like eclectic. Normally you'd have like a stay-at-home anchor DPS instead of Tracer to actually help with this, while the Pharah just kind of does her own thing. Also, you notice that Lucio's heals, unless he's saving his amp, particularly to heal the tanks are gonna... the Orisa in particular has a hard time healing through a lot of damage.
Lucio 1, Lucio 1. Lucio dead.
Nice.
See how Mercy's kind of looking
on
around
point.
right now.
Diva.
And
Diva out of
she's
suit.
forced to commit here instead of pocket the
Also,
pocket
Genji
the
on
Pharah.
point. He's behind point, back left.
Like the Mercy saved this fight, and like Team
He went
40's
over.
inattention to the
he
Mercy
on
while
top?
she
Yeah,
was
he
on
got
the
out,
ground
he got out.
kind of saved it.
Alright, I'm gonna post up here on the left and try
Unfortunately,
to get a
while
good
the Mercy was on the ground, the enemy hit scan did not take that opportunity to mess with Tracer.
Does somebody want to heal me? There you go.
That is definitely an
Oh, I
opportunity
thought
you
you
gave that was
I figured
not
you want to heal yourself for the
taken.
the ult charge.
Nah, I was gonna let you guys charge it up.
Alright, so we almost have
They're coming
Valkyrie.
all the way.
It's hard to see what kind of ults
Genji's
we have.
also mid.
What kind of ults do they have? Probably not much. We won the fight.
Monkey again, monkey.
See how they commit to a fight, and enemy team seems a little split here. I don't really see their diva, but I think their diva's in here. Here's their Zenyatta. This is not good Zenyatta positioning. I realize the call is the Winston, and that's really good for the people who are focusing on point and probably the Tracer, but like the Pharah can easily shoot him here. This is the Soldier or another support. Either seems to be wide open, although Zenyatta is more like a force multiplier. Not only does he provide damage, but he essentially lessens the health of anyone who is discorded. So Winston, instead of having 500 health, has like 300 and change. Not quite 400. I think it's like 350. Discord Orb is a very, very strong ability, which is why Zenyatta, both for that ability and for his damage output, is high valued.
Lucio 1, Lucio 1.
Okay, we get Lucio, that's cool. Unfortunately, Pharah has an issue now where she's kind of between people who kind of want to kill her. We saw the Soldier come up on high ground, just like right here. We see the Zenyatta just below right here, and we see the Genji here. By descending to make it easier on herself to hit this Lucio, she's actually kind of put herself more in harm's way.
Where?
And then we barrage and we make sure that we can die. We do get 2, so it's not a bad trade, and we do have Mercy while they do not. So if Orisa now, we have a man advantage right now. If Orisa can walk up and sort of shield this corpse, Mercy gets a res, and this fight is cleanly won by us. Right? Alternatively, if you're feeling a bit more daring, Hog can body block it. Either tank can really body block it, but we should be looking to try to get this res up.
Mech. And Genji on point, Genji on point.
Ooh, yeah, the Mercy drifted into a bad spot. After this.
Lucio 1, Lucio 1.
So the same reasons why Pharah's positioning was awkward. Mercy's position becomes untenable once she drops. She's once again in between 3, and now Diva's here, 4. Unfortunately, Diva didn't react to the barrage, which she should have. Winston and Diva should always kind of be moving together in these sort of compositions. As one person put it, if Diva's value is 1 and Winston value is 1, together they're 3, not 2. They really synergize well together. So when they're desync like this, you're doing yourself a disservice. Well, you're doing the Winston a disservice more than the Diva, I think, but so since your tanks didn't come out here, you're just kind of drifting as Mercy in middle of no man's land, and you rightfully get picked off
and
here.
Genji on point, Genji on point.
Oh, fuck.
We use Valkyrie, which if we were going to,
left
we
side or
should have
top?
done it earlier, but
No, he's
this
mid.
fight seems quite one, so I
Gotta
don't
get the
blame you
pick.
for not
Did you get Baby Diva?
having used Valkyrie.
She killed
Mistake,
herself.
of course, to use it
Yeah.
early, or when you're about to die, if at all. Just hold
Get
on
the
to it.
boost. Oh well.
I'm not doing well.
Alright, so right now their sort of attack pattern is set up their hit scan here. Their Zenyatta's been coming low ground for some reason, which makes him an easy prime target. If instead the Zenyatta like just swings around and just kind of sits in this area or on the high ground, he'd be able maybe to get something done. The issue with the high ground, I guess, is that the Pharah is going to be looking for him the whole time while already distracted with the Soldier. So if they're both up there, the splash damage might just kind of ruin both of their days. Pavilion, I think, is a generally decent place. You have a mini here and a mini here to play with. So if I were Tracer, I'm trying to stay in these areas to deny them from Zenyatta. and she also has similar health packs to play with, and the mobility to use them more than he does. I forget what healer the enemy is running. I think it's on Lucio. Maybe it's Lucio Zen? Either way, the tank should be diving pretty much with only the support of a Zenyatta Orb on the enemy team. If they're not, you can kill whatever healer decided to go in with them, or you can kill the Zenyatta since he has no peel.
Anyone close
So
to
it's
ult?
up to Zenyatta to be fucking careful. Oh, we just saw it.
I just used mine.
Or the Zenyatta can
Alright.
stay with the Mercy.
So Liaris just
So we have some good heals
use that.
here.
I would try to save that for a blade or something.
Yeah, I'll use it for blade.
I go in mid.
See, we're down again, which is kind of awkward. So like, there's no real reason to descend here as far. In fact, we kind of just want to play like way up, kind of on our high ground and behind like Lighthouse. With the high ground of Lighthouse, because we're most safe there. I guess you're trying as far to get a line of sight down this hallway, but you can just spam the entrance here if you think they're coming out of here. You don't actually have to go in yourself. If you're playing that far back, especially with a Mercy Pocket, regardless of the Discord, as long as you're not facing a Widowmaker, any hit scan at that range is going to tickle you, and Mercy's just going to heal it straight up. You also would be then playing at a range where their Diva, which you should be keeping track of, can't ever rush you. And you make it quite difficult for you to ever actually be in danger, and thus for your Mercy to ever actually be in danger. Remember, you're not just a DPS character in the sky as far, you are the escape route for your healer.
Nothing else happens.
So we end up going like way off where they can't follow us, which is fine.
Lucio 1,
I'll
Lucio
play a
1.
good angle here. We're dropping down.
Oh.
Oh no.
Yeah, we're both dead. I don't know, we're fine.
That's 2 down. They got it. Back out.
I don't know what kind of ults you have,
Yeah.
but they're down one
Solid,
right now with Soldier. So like, yeah, you're down your main tank and your main healer, but their Soldier dropped early, so you're actually only down one. The call here shouldn't be to back out. Even if you think the fight is lost, what you should do, maybe not all of you, but at least Hog, who's not going anywhere when it comes to contesting this point, he needs to stay on point and stall as long as possible. You can get this control percentage up quite a decent bit more, so that if you do win, so that they will win this fight and start building control percentage, but when you win the next fight, that they don't have time to successfully regroup and recontest. So if you can get this to like 85-90% off a stall, then they have to take a staggered fight to still remain in the game. So the call shouldn't be to leave, because he's feeding ult charge anyway as Hog. He's not able to leave. And anyone who's not able to leave, and maybe even some who are able to leave, it behooves you to stall this out so you only have to win one fight instead of two to win this game.
Call it for the percent undermine.
Yeah, you really want to stall.
It wasted beat.
If Mercy can heal him up. Oh, you already gave up the point.
You guys
Okay.
are down 2
So
right
reset,
now.
reset.
I can't believe I lived through that.
Okay, where you at? Where are we pushing in? Holding up.
Just regroup.
Alright, I'm with you, KMR.
Alright, so Winston used jump. There's no fear of retaliation from him. I think I discussed in the other video why, if I can get a good angle of it. There's almost one.
If I lived through that.
So we're gonna see our tanks all kind of set up here. This is a little bit awkward. We are playing a shield tank. And there's a lot of AoE things that can hurt us in this small entryway. We're only kind of controlling like this space by going that way, where they have the entire rest of point. If we instead swing and kind of like take the fight from here, it's still kind of difficult for them to dive or flank us, but we have more room to work with. And in particular, Winston doesn't get value from his Tesla gun by just holding us all here and shooting 3 of us at once. Genji doesn't get to dash through all of us for free, or blade all of us for free. There is some consideration that wherever this soldier is, which is probably the high ground, gets a line of sight on us, but he's going to have that anyway as we come out this doorway. So I'd prefer coming main as opposed to this side coast here. As we see, doesn't seem to really matter this fight, because D.Va kills herself. So it's a good thing we use Supercharger in this. With these two ultimates used, we don't need a barrage at all. Good to pocket him by your mercy. Even with trance, so like, you killed 2. This fight's won. You just need to clean it up. Save every other ultimate. If I recall, we don't do that. We use Valkyrie because we're afraid we're still going to lose this fight up 2 people. So yeah, I don't think the Valkyrie was necessary. You just have to have some faith in your team to win it. We haven't actually used our res yet, so we're not really in... So even if like we trade in that fight, we're not really worried about losing it, because losing the next one because we have Resurrect and Valkyrie. This is going to be a greedy pistol play. We actually got him. Alright, so now we're playing up here. They should be able to hear us. They don't. We get an easy kill on him. We get too close to the Farah. That's a dangerous position to be, although I understand what you were trying to do there. You're trying to land back on the ledge. It's cheeky once, but they should be checking it every time now. Yeah, what are we doing that close there? Just being greedy. We just need to zone people out. We don't need to risk ourselves. And now that we've dropped so low, we put our Mercy in danger. But this fight's already basically won. We can line of sight this. It's a good beat in reaction. Okay. So that was relatively straightforward outside of some hiccups. Enemy team never really forced us to do much of anything. Alright, so I touched on it previously. So here's our basic comp. We're locking in Zenyatta here instead. Once again, it's not a lot of heals for our main tanks. Thankfully, most kind of comes down to a shield war and a mini flanker battle. So for the shield war, you'd like Junkrat. You have the 2 tanks who basically comprise of the shield war. You have the McCree here to help prevent dive and to hit people in the air and prevent flankers from really fucking you. But like you're kind of lacking in the shield damage outside of your 2 tanks. So if they're running the standard anti-dive comp, they're going to have better shield break and better healing than you. So when your shield breaks, you won't be able to sustain your position. We do have a double defensive ultimate, which seems like a little bit of overkill. Especially since, so long as the shield persists, it's difficult for Zenyatta or Lucio to build their ults effectively. And after the first fight, assuming you win it, the speed boost doesn't mean anything. Lucio's always going to be good. Lucio's always going to be good on Koth just because getting there first is generally a good thing. I don't think it matters so much on this point because both teams kind of set up on their respective corners and then play it out. As much as it matters on like Nepal Village or a couple other ones where the opening position really dictates the first fight. This one, I don't know. Both play out. They have a Pharah. So their objective is to use the Pharah as a flanker to get around your shield and then bust your shield or force you away from this position and then pummel you with their 2 tanks set up over here. Your win condition now is to prevent this from happening. Discord needs to be pretty much constantly up here, and McCree's attention needs to be pretty much up there too. Your Tracer can't help you with the shield break and can't help you with the Pharah, so her job is to harass their shield line to the point where they can't contribute to the shield war and distract them from that. So you in fact win the shield war despite your less shield break, if that makes sense. I don't recall what second DPS they're running inside of here. I think it's Tracer. So you have about similar shield break. I think they have slightly better healing if they're running the Moira. Alright, so we get booped here. We weren't paying attention. We get double kill. This fight is over. Everyone disengage. Good calls, good calls. Nice cheeky little shot. Yep. So boosted rockets, or Pharah in general, is fine-ish on shield break. She's serviceable. So is McCree, honestly. So we're backing up really, really, really far. We line aside our orb. We should just kind of leave our orb on our Orisa or Tracer. Alright, so we get 2 opening picks. The issue, so like Pharah and Orisa are hard to push into. Particularly in this point where there's long sightlines for them to spam down. We're kind of lucky to get this. Generally we have to swap off of Orisa in order to retake a point. Hook pull is a good way to overcome that obstacle, as our Tracer flanks, or picking out a greedy Tracer on the side. Now we have an advantage. We gotta push in, just jump right in front of the shield. So we know the Pharah is up here somewhere, more like up here somewhere. As Zenyatta, I don't know if we need to actually expose ourselves here. We might be better served just kind of hanging out in the mini room, just observing this fight by line of sighting the Pharah to make sure that we can continue playing. Or if we're going to be seeing ourselves on point, we want to immediately shift this way and then backwards into the mini room, so we're never in her line of sight for too long. We instead end up using this here, and we take out the Pharah anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. So this position has made Zenyatta kind of awkward in that, like, with the Pharah's positioning, if she lands like a concussion blast here, we're kind of going into the pit. This is actually dangerous. If we just like leave the Discord on her, we're just like, that's as much as we really need to contribute to this aerial battle until our McCree gets back. We should be content with like line of sighting her, maybe using this pillar, or immediately using Orisa shield and resetting up probably behind this wall to some degree, and just patiently waiting for the McCree. Right now, the only thing we as a team that need to worry about, yeah, this is kind of concerning, but like we need to capture the point. You know, we set up on point. We need to focus whoever's on point and make sure that we build control percentage as soon as possible. This is annoying, but they're not really in a position to contest anything so long as we have a shield angled towards it. And we're like chasing it right now while they're contesting. What's going on there? We had an issue here briefly as Zenyatta where we used a crutch for our aiming. So like we're gonna start charging towards the Lucio, who should absolutely die here. This position is awful by Lucio, where we kind of, instead of moving so we're harder to hit, we move towards the Lucio in a line. It's unlikely the Lucio is going to straight kill us, but it certainly does make it easier for him to land like headshots on us as he's retreating. And additionally, it kind of like moves us closer to the pit, where if she has jump boost, which I don't know if you as Zenyatta have been keeping track of, or that hook comes in, we're in a worse position to avoid them. See how we move forward right here? Get pretty close. Instead, the hog eats it. Yeah, why are we moving anywhere near this hole? Who cares? We're not trying to kill her down there. We need to help our team. Who is our healing orb on? It's on Tracer. So yeah, the Tracer's not a bad suggestion, but the Tracer can be mostly independent. Your tanks really need it. Make sure you have it on there. I like the Discord on the hog. Just based on who's being focused right now and who you need to force to back off, maybe the Tracer's a better selection here. Ultimately, as the Tracer here, I don't really want to be fighting this hog ever. Since the breather damage reduction changes, I really don't want to be farming hog as Tracer, knowing that that cooldown and or hook or number of things is up. Fights take a long time. Is that, and there's a lot you have to outplay a hog on, and he can just be patient. So for that reason, I think Tracer should be helping your Orisa here. Because remember, you still don't have control of the point. You need team focus to prevent them from contesting and capture this point as quickly as possible. Fortunately for you, the Orisa without your support completely saved that point. Now we help. Now we realize it. Alright. So if you really want to get Discord on this target, best way to circumvent the shield is either convince your team to break it, which is what ends up happening, or swing further this way, probably not near this pit itself, but along the mini room, which gives you the mini in case you get jumped, a couple pillars, line of sight to prevent a Tracer from rushing you. Not that the Tracer's alive anymore. But gives you some cover, gives you good long sight lines, because you really don't need to be close as Zenyatta. All in all, the rest of the team is pushing up to collapse on the final member. That's good. Good Overwatch. Small tidbit, place the Discord before you start shooting. Your Discord is more important than whatever damage you're getting on him. In all likelihood. Heal up your Tracer, then put it back on your tank. I guess the McCree is fine for now, because he's likely to be taking poke. But you really need to be cautious. So he's going to line of sight you, you're going to get your Harmony return. Return it. Put your orb on someone. Literally anyone. Okay, probably not our Lucio. Lucio can take care of himself and isn't in any immediate danger. But better than no one, I guess. Put it on your tank. So you have to be careful. So I like the reaction to the positioning. So you should know that their Tracer is probably somewhere in this area, and they're likely to aggress right now. As a team, knowing that you're down a man, you kind of have two options. You can either be like, okay, this next fight we're at a disadvantage, we're likely to lose, so we need to make that fight last as long as possible. Hopefully we haven't lost position or people to the point that when the Tracer does get back, we can't retake the fight. Or we have to commit an ultimate to overcome our disadvantage. That's what should be being discussed in comms right now. In particular, since the enemy Tracer's over here, you should need to watch flanks from this side. You need to watch them coming from here. If that makes sense. I think what ends up happening, though, is that the Tracer, once winning on the side battle, decides to opt into a fight against your hog. Which Tracer promptly loses. Yeah, so now you have the awkward position where, like, the Tracer should be coming from the right side, and their Pharah is pincering you from their left, and the rest of their team is going to set up in the middle, so they're setting up a very large crossfire, and your only real option, especially when down a person, is just kind of set up and try to line of sight as much of it as possible and stall out. or you can like Lucio B take a proactive play on the tanks who are the only ones really contesting, and take the fight to them. But it's kind of difficult against Orisa Hog as Orisa Hog because advancing forward too far just kind of gets you pulled into the pit. Alright, so for some reason they decided to transition here, so like, if the fire is not out here, there's no actual crossfire, and that position isn't so good with the McCree on the high ground here. The McCree's position is, who's the high ground to the right of this current frame, is pretty good at dealing with wherever the fuck the Orisa and the Hog decided to set up. The shield needs to be repositioned once you get the chance. I like the bongo positioning, I think, because it's out of line of sight of the enemy team, so they can't easily take care of it. We're line of sighting people here. So our orb got returned. We should re-establish it. All right. Is there any reason why we as Zenyatta are moving over? I don't really think so. We end up getting a good angle. Every time you get a discord on a valuable target like Mercy, team needs to react to it. It's a good call out. Hey Mercy, ult in. Back up. Just everyone back up. So like, the Mercy ult in here is only good as an offensive tool or a defensive tool. So long as they can engage the fight in the duration of it. They really didn't want to ult from so far back. And really the counterplay of that is just kind of absorb till it's over and then properly take the fight. Remember, you don't have to do anything because you're in control of the point. Every second that the attackers fail to take the point is in your advantage. So if you can just stall and make the fight as miserable as possible, that's great. That's to speak nothing of waiting out the duration of this ultimate. So really, we should be backing up back to the safety of our corner, and Tracer can do whatever she wants in the meantime. She probably shouldn't engage 1v6 while the enemy team is being Valkyried, but, you know. So, because we're staying so far up here, some booping is going on. You can see why our position wasn't great. So our shield is up here, but we quickly have to leave that position at the slightest indication of either someone showing up from like here or the Far just existing. Like the Far's positioning isn't great because it's kind of up in the sky, easy to get discorded and easy to get focused. But like she could have easily come over some other wall, and actually been using cover and preventing this shield from actually meaning anything. There's no reason why we couldn't have just backed up. Alright, so I understand why we valked, or why we use trance. Should really be, ooh. Oh, hoo, hoo. Alright, so let's check these ultimates. Okay, we have some options. So, what I think I'd like to see, they use Barrage, they use Bomb. They have no, like, really scary ultimates except for maybe Hog, and they might have this. But I think what we can do, they might have Beat as well. If we hurry up, I think we have enough time for two pushes here, if we really hurry. What I'd like to see is we group up, we Lucio rush into underneath Lighthouse here. We come out, we amp speed into them with Sound Barrier and Whole Hog. And we just take their tanks out from under them. And then once the tanks are out of the way, we control the rest of the map with perhaps Deadeye. We should be looking at how to coordinate these ultimates. We have maybe 2 ults, or 2 runs. Alright, so our McCree is going elsewhere. This makes this a bit more difficult. It seems like we're just gonna kind of play this standard and hope that like a flanking solo McCree ult is enough. In Orisa versus Orisa battles, High Noon is very good because even it continues to lock on beyond shields, and it continues to build damage even when the reticle is there. So it's very, very easy to break a shield and get a kill through Deadeye through a shield. So if that's his plan to High Noon from an angle, he might as well just High Noon from behind Orisa's shield and accomplish like basically the same thing. Just coordination with your team. Right, Mini. Yep. So we end up with the flanking High Noon. See how he almost pays for it. There's no reason why he needed to do it from that safety. If the enemy team had been paying more attention or had been controlling the flanks with the Tracer, like, this gets called out and this doesn't happen. Also, if, like, the pharmacy wasn't kind of in the middle of fucking nowhere, they might have been able to react better to this. See how we're kind of pressed up again? I don't know if we really need to do that. And we get booped. Alright, we get properly punished for that. We're all fine. We're still without our main tank. Due to staggers, we likely have an advantage, so we can push up. Yeah, I like that. The McCree should not be the first point of engage, though. There you go. Alright, so there was never a discussion. There was some discussion of what ults they use and what ults they'd be likely to have. But not really until the end there. There was not like, oh, we gotta worry about... We knew that she was coming in for a barrage, but we weren't like, they're gonna have barrage before the fight. And we never really played around Supercharger or Whole Hog, but it didn't really matter. You're never gonna play around Bomb. So... What's next? Oh yeah, we play Eichenwald. Okay. So this seems to be our team comp, if I recall. We have two main healers, kind of. For this, we're running like a 2-4, where we have 2 in the air, 4 on the ground. Unlike comps with Zenyatta, there's no one left behind and everyone kind of dives in. Nomura goes in, tries not to burn Fade ever, but she might need to. In the case she burns Fade, she has to be very, very, very careful because she should be the prime target here. If the enemy team notices that she doesn't have Fade and she eats focus, then suddenly this entire bottom crew has issues surviving. Not that they need a ton of heals anyway, but they have nowhere to really jump back to because the Mercy presumably can't just descend to help them out. So one thing we can do here, which I think you guys end up doing, is waiting for the Pharah to pressure the enemy team to the point where we can use direct rockets or other damage that Pharah has accrued as a dive trigger. And what I mean by that is, a dive trigger is a condition or set of conditions under which you feel comfortable committing to a dive with your mobility cooldowns because you have acquired some sort of advantage. This is our first time running dive, so let's discuss what dive conditions are. A target is good for a dive if 1, out of position, out of position. So if you have like, if for some reason you walk up to the gate and there's just a Zenyatta waiting under the bridge and he's like 50 feet from his enemy team, he's just like, take me now, then you take him. That's free. So instead, the next criteria generally is they're in good position, but what was it? The last one, who can't escape. out of position regardless of target. So even if it wasn't Zenyatta, if it was a Hog, you still kind of dive him because he and his team have to burn resources to save him. It can't be peeled for, I think, which isn't a K, by the way. Can't be peeled for. You're gonna have to excuse my handwriting because this looks awful. Peeled for. So even if the Zenyatta is in a good position, if the rest of his team are out of position, then you can attack him even though his positioning wasn't bad. You see this sometimes, for instance, soldiers on the high ground, they're generally in a good position, but there's no one on their team to help them, and if that's the case, then they're prime targets for dive. And the third condition is can't escape. Can't escape. Or survive the dive. So you don't want to commit to a dive if the target is just going to blink away. You don't want to blow your main cooldowns only for the target to make you look foolish, and you're going to be kind of stranded in the middle of 5 other burly men waiting to pound you while you wait for your jump cooldown to come back. For that reasons, we kind of do this checklist off. There are some like outcomes of this checklist that make things interesting when you're running dive versus dive. It's like, who do you dive if no one's ever out of position? There's no one to really. Everyone can be peeled for, and everyone can escape or survive. Like, say if they were running a mirrored comp here, how do you approach that? Like, who do you dive? That's an interesting question, which we can get to if we ever see dive versus dive. I don't know if we do here, but that's what we're looking for. Generally, the entire team should be looking for their dive trigger, which is someone outlined as one of those criteria that I mentioned here. Bearing that, you can wait for someone who can't escape or survive, thanks to fire rockets making them low and making the enemy team burn resources to keep them up, and then you can dive them as a team. I think we end up seeing this first point when the Pharah gets someone low and the Tracer just comes in and finishes it up with one clip. I think it's the Soldier. That's a good dive trigger. So Zenyatta is very, very good in dive comps, and how you play Zenyatta in dive comps, particularly with the lineup you have chosen. Like if you replace the Lucio with Zenyatta, then you have 2 in the air. Let's do it this way. Pharah plus Mercy. Mercy in the air. And then you have your Winston, you have your Diva, and you have your Tracer going into attack. And then the Zenyatta is a good distance away. He's only really going to contribute Discord and Harmony to the fight. He's really going to contribute his orbs to a fight because in the event that the enemy team has a flanker, they will be looking for this Zenyatta. So the Zenyatta waits for the fight to begin, for the dive trigger to happen, and then shows himself and begins actually contributing. What the Zenyatta wants to do is, if he is noticed and if he is dove, it takes the maximum amount of time for him to die as possible, and the enemy has to expend all of his or her resources to get to her. So if a Zenyatta is following closely behind his dive tanks, a Tracer just has to like blink once or twice to get to him and then can recall back to the fight, or blink back to the fight depending on health pool. If instead this distance here is 40 meters, which is the maximum range of both of Zenyatta's Harmony and Discord Orb. Then the Tracer, who can only blink 7 meters at a time, I believe, has to use 3 blinks and then walk a distance to even get to him, spending more blinks probably fighting him, since dueling a Zenyatta with the Discord as Tracer isn't always a given, especially if you're using blinks just to get to him. And then, since Tracer uses all her cooldowns just to duel him, has to walk all the way back to the fight, and at this point, the rest of the team should have cleaned up their side of things. So the Zenyatta is more or less an orb bot, and can be kind of considered sacrificial. No one's coming back to peel for him, he's kind of on his own. For that reason, and because the positioning and the timing of showing yourself is so unforgiving, in that case, it's not a fun place to earn, and it's hard for people to sort of learn and consciously work towards. So you have people just swapping off and just be like, I can't live as Lucio, let me swap, or I can't live as Zenyatta, let me swap to Lucio and just follow you guys in. Yeah, you guys do need to be coordinating that, and it's a good thing that you're picking it up. So instead of learning proper, so if instead of like just being like, my positioning on Zenyatta is bad and I need to play it closer to how I'd play an Ana, people just switch to Lucio and make it easier. But the Zenyatta is preferred here. His ultimate's better, what he contributes is more than Lucio, and if you're running dive, you use your mobility to get through the choke anyway. It's not like you're a death ball that don't have other options. Alright, so we're going on this long flank by Pharah. It's generally good. Ooh, what did I do there? Excuse me? Alright, we end up doing what I was going to suggest anyway. So, like, we get some good scouting information from this position. There is a little bit of concern that it's not going to show up against the soldier that they're running, but if they're running a McCree that's being likely pocketed, or they're running double hit scan, or they're running something, we're kind of lingering here too long, and we want to, like, if our goal was just to get to this second point area here, we could have said just gone around the buildings instead of jumped, peeked, opened ourselves up before showing ourselves. I don't think this will rarely punish you at any of the distances here, unless they maybe like have a widow, but that's unlikely on defense for first point anyway. I will say that it should be communicated, unless it's already understood by your team, that if we're going to be taking this route as far, we have to wait. The rest of our team, rather, has to wait for us to be in proper position, because if they decide they have their dive trigger fulfilled before we're in position to follow up with rockets, that's 2 characters out of the fight, and they're opting into a 4v6. So we need to wait. Right. So good on your fire in using like buildings as line of sight in general. Mercy swinging a little bit too far here, but generally not too much an issue. You can see kind of how like your tanks right now are actually too far away to follow up on any missile directs. Your Tracer is doing a good job of being within a blink or 2 of that condition. So honestly, I'd like to see your tanks move up kind of with your Tracer. They should be basically behind this pillar right now, just kind of waiting, poking things out, seeing how things are going. Tracer notices, comes in, clips someone, gets out. That's perfect. That's exactly what they want. Alright, so now the rest of the team commits. How are we looking? We're a little bit low here, but they're down their main hit scan. It's probably not that big of a deal. I think this here is the Zenyatta. So we need to all be on the same targets. It looks like we have two separate things going on right now. We have the Tracer going on the vulnerable Zenyatta, which is not a bad target. I can't see who's here. It's maybe Junkrat. That's an equally juicy as a target. And right now we have our Pharah looking at him, we have our Winston shooting him, and we have the D.Va coming in. So he's likely fucked. I don't really blame the Tracer here for going to the Zenyatta, but I would like to hear someone in comms say, Junkrat, Junkrat, Junkrat. Okay? To make sure that everyone's on the same page. This split of focus doesn't matter now, but it might in the future. I like the bubble. The bubble makes sure the Junkrat is dead, and makes sure the Zenyatta can't assist in any way. This fight was likely over as soon as the soldier gets picked, though. So it's Moira, Junkrat's around. The Reinhardt doesn't really matter. We see like a split. I see like the Reinhardt over here, but like the Junkrat's like right here. Alright, the Junkrat should have died a long time ago, I think. We kind of lost him in the confusion. Not a big deal, a mostly clean fight. Anyway, the soldier's just kind of feeding. Yep, feeding. So is the Moira. They can't recontest this. Alright, so they're down a person right now. What I'd like to see is you leave like your Moira on the payload, and the rest of you push up to take the 5v5 in position so they don't set up on castle. Because this second point is very heavily dependent on castle, as I mentioned in my other video. Alright, so Genji, Winston, D.Va. Still not too much to pressure the Pharah. Like, yeah, they probably still have this soldier, but like, soldier has a hard time positioning in castle unless the rest of the team is helping him. Alright, so the rest of us do seem to mostly push up, especially our Pharah combo, which is what I'm really looking for. So like, there's a failure on Team 40's part to actually take this positioning. A lot of it has to do with how late the Moira and the soldier died, and how quickly Team 37 pushed up into this space. So, Team 40 needs to quickly kind of take that. Once again, Team 40 should be looking to take an early fight, and would love to if it weren't for their staggers, as the door opens, because they're likely to lose the next fight because they got rolled. What they need to do is take a dry fight early on, try to get ultimates out and die on payload so that they have another fight somewhere around bridge, so they have another fight here before the game ends. Before this street's phase ends, rather. So, as they're setting up now, their first fight doesn't come until about bridge. And they will lose positioning until maybe about here and they decide to commit. At which point, depending on the sloppiness of this fight, let's say they all die on payload rather well, the positioning means that Team 37, our attackers, probably don't need to commit much in the way of ultimates. And since they have ultimates, they're likely to win that fight regardless, maybe heavily. And as such, then this last fight is already lost before it began, just based off ult economy. So you want to take an early fight knowing you're going to lose just for kind of ult economy. There's the sticky, there's the full payload. So we have a fight here over castle, but the payload is just kind of still moving. Attackers need to be careful right now that you have 2 on payload, you have 1 down. So you only have 1, 2, 3 people committed to this actual fight, while they have a total of 5 people ready to fight you up here. This position should not be able to be held long by you, and you're going to have to quickly fall down. Good job on the Winston to actually contest the payload. The visor comes out. It's a little errant, I think, because a lot of people just kind of dip line of sight. Good focus that the Winston has burn cooldowns getting here and needs to die because he's contesting. Jumps him in priority for sure. We get Diva Mech. I don't really like this positioning by Farah. So, like, their soldier died recently, though. There's still, like, a non-zero chance, maybe due to Diva Mech health that I can't see, that you're able to take this aggressive fucking position. But, like, you drug your Mercy kind of in front of what is their spawn door. And I think Zenyatta is still around here, maybe? Anyway, the Mercy is kind of a prime target, and the Mercy doesn't really want to follow you here. There's no reason why you can't just kind of play above castle forever, instead of taking this positioning. Oh no, they had like their whole team there. Yeah, that was aggressive. Oh, we trans back. We're gonna end up Valking here. Can't recall if this Valkyrie was good or not. Probably don't save, yeah. Don't save. It's a very dangerous Valkyrie. Or Resurrect, I think. Fighting out on point. So like our other healer, who is a main healer in her own right, is up on the payload and alive, and happens to also be ulting. I think as Mercy, we should be looking to damage boost instead of continuously heal. I don't know why they went Reaper. Payload? Hello? Alright, no one really needs to be on payload while it's breaking through the door. It'll do that automatically. Alright, so as I explained in the other video, from Team 40's perspective, this last point pretty heavily likes death ball comps. If you're close to your ultimates, by all means take a fight like it, but generally, like, it's a Junkrat, Ryan, Orisa sort of fest here. The skybox isn't very good for Farah. The angles allow squishy targets to hide and retreat very easily, so dive is kind of awkward. The corridors are narrow, so like Tracer becomes less effective. But if you can execute it, why not? Line of sight it. Is there any real reason to dive him in ult, though? It's like your entire team is pretty safe. You have the Tracer back here, you have the Moira who like just pieced out with her Fade. Diva can boost away in Matrix and just fine. Like, I don't think you need to actually commit your ultimate, and in the case that the rest of your team is hiding, all this is doing is feeding that much more ult charge. You're ulting for the privilege to give them ults after they've likely swapped to a different comp for this last point. We end up getting him, but look how low we got. We've had 800 ult charge for that, and we haven't actually pushed the payload yet. Alright, so I remember this from the other's perspective. So watch this Reinhardt. This Reinhardt is now in the middle of 1, 2, I think you're here 3, 4, and your Moira somewhere around here. There's now in between like 5 of you. he should not be able to swing like this for free. He should just die. But you're getting some really nice cleave there. He's gonna drop. That barrage needs to be communicated with your diva. Or your Winston, so that either a bubble or a matrix is protecting you during it. Farrah Barrage is a very finicky beast. And we're committing a lot of ultimates here. We better win this fight. And we commit another. So we got 1 or 2 with the barrage, I forget, and then another 2 with self-destruct. Do we really need coalescence? Like, one of our DPS is down. We really don't need that, right? Just a bad coalesce. We're being a little aggressive here. I don't know if we have to go this far and risk our diva mech when they're not contesting payload. I do like the prerogative to stagger them further. And so I'm a little conflicted to being like, yeah, we clean up that ult charge, and no, we really just don't want to lose diva mech because we know they're going to have another fight in here regardless of whether we stagger these people or not. So I think the payload's like a little too far for that. Or not far enough for that, rather. For us to really care that much. Yeah. Bombs, whatever. It's fine. Alright, so far as kind of in the middle here. I liked it better when she was playing like this high ground. If only because she could easily just spam from both sides. She's able to see people coming up this way. So if she's on the high ground, the Mercy is now. She can spam the entrance or the spawn door here. She can kind of spam this one just fine, and she can see people flanking along this back route. And she's not in the middle of the team. Although it's unlikely for her to die, it's just there's no real reason. I don't know what this position gives you that you can't use just basically from here. Good Valkyrie. If we win this fight, we win the game. Win the round, rather. They beat in response. Good on them. What I'm not hearing is target focus. That's not really how you call it. Be more adamant. Soldier, soldier, soldier. Alright. Lucio, Lucio. And give a location. Oh, yeah, we did kind of deserve to die for that. Kind of. Watch out for trap isn't a call. We don't know a location of it. I don't know if anyone has really seen it recently. We just need to continually call a target until they die or until some other target is juicier. So shot calling, we're kind of just like, our tracer right now is doing a lot of work, and so like we're not forced to have focus fire because they're both staggering and because we're just kind of out mechanically playing them 1v1, but it doesn't seem like we're too terribly concerned with focus fire. And that's something a better team will take advantage of. The silence in these comms right now is killing me. Okay. And we can. Okay. I like how we're taking even this little bit of downtime between maps and transition to discuss what we're going to do. I see a lot of teams kind of like fuck around, like, ooh, that was a good round, yeah, I really liked your ult combo or whatever, and then suddenly there's like 15 seconds left in Assemble Heroes, and they're like, oh, by the way, what are we looking to play? And they lose like a decent amount of setup time. All business. Yep, I like your decision to already commit to going mobile for after first point. That is pretty standard. You guys seem to have an understanding of the map. And we're doing shield comp first. A lot of spam. Sounds good. Sounds excellent. Moira sounds fine. What's weaknesses of this comp? We don't have the greatest anti-Pharah. So if they try to do the same sort of flank that you did, you're going to be split. For that reason, I think McCree serves that defense a little bit better. Just Pharah in general is just good on this first attack. What else? I think you're generally fine against quad tank. You have enough rush. I don't know, it just seems like a solid defense. It's going to come down to execution. Where you really want to set up is on catwalk right here, basically where the Zen is right now. Yep, sounds good. Shield is maybe a little forward. We got plenty of retreat options and whatnot. Shouldn't be a big deal. I think it ends up being a big deal in a second. Hi, Lakota. How's it going? It kills me that the Fuzzbug plays at 40 FPS. Alright, so let's start here. I don't think there's any real reason for Junkrat to play on the opposite side. One of the more popular things to do as Deathball in this comp is sort of either like quad tank Deathball or 2-2-2 or like triple tank or anything like that, is to like if the shield tank team is holding at crosswalk here, like you guys are, then they kind of speed through choke using an amped speed boost and defense matrix to get through, in which case the Junkrat is just suddenly in front of 6 people. If you want to control this side and the bridge, generally you have your team play this side, but no one's been doing that for a while, I think. So I'm not sure what sort of advantage you have from getting your main DPS to play opposite you here. I just don't think there's a good reason for it. Just stay behind shield, play it safe. Get the nice spam line down there. So they're dicking around at the choke already, enemy team, and they're going to be paid for it. Be paying for it, rather. See how they have a very, very slow engage? You saw them, like, they started on this side of the choke, they swung to this side, and now they're like, no, we want to go this way. Reinhardt's shield is already getting chewed up for it. Lucio dies. Good. They're full committing to this despite losing 3. We push up because we know that there's still 2 of them out there. Now there's only 1 out there. Good on us for cleaning this up. Praised you guys for this in the other video. Still really, really good. I don't see a real reason to hold up here. You know they're running some sort of Deathball speed comp, so if they actually get their shit together, and they speed in here either from the back way or just straight up here, then they suddenly rush beyond your shield and can start an advantageous fight for them. Because really the problem against Orisa comps and spam comps is closing the gap. That's not to say you don't have a lot of damage and ways to defend yourselves once they do close the gap, but you've just removed your advantage of being able to prevent them from closing the distance easily. So the Reinhardt would much rather start on top of you than 40 meters away, and as Orisa, you'd much rather have them start 40 meters away so you can spam and keep their shield in check. They just won't have to commit cooldowns. No, they're not going to win the shield war. Correct assessment. Alright, so we back up. We, for some reason, replaced the shield at the choke when we've already basically, as a team, agreed that we're going to abandon that position. So there is actually a brief window for them to rush in here. Pharah solo means that she will eat any chip damage she eats from the soldier or from The Zen is likely to stick so long as Anna's attention is elsewhere. Who is our Orobon right now? Roadhog? Probably not a great choice as a Zen target. He is one of your off tanks, but he doesn't have armor and he has his own heal, and we have a Moira. I'd probably just leave it on the Orisa to make sure that her armor stays on as long as possible. We need to get discords on. Oh, we could have dodged that. Alright, we press up. Good pick. Good pick. Wall hacks are broken. Do we... That's fine. So, like, if the Farah cared to, she could actually come from a flanking position, which would make this hold at the choke even worse than it already is. Just judging on they can rush it more easily than you can back at crosswalk. I'll reiterate once again, these spam cams really like to use map distances as ways of slowing down the enemy push. And so by giving them this whole distance, that's this much distance more of resources that they can have. What is that? That's like 14, 15 meters? Yeah, we agree that we're gonna move it back. Hey, there's the far out. So like there's no reason really as Zen to peek that. If we're worried, let me back up here for a second. So we replace the shield and then the far comes. So like I say this against widows too. They take an elevated position and like your natural instinct against a threat is to move backwards away from it, but that's not actually to safety. When you have the shield like this, moving backwards actually makes the angle of incidence of where we can be hit easier for the attacker, because more of our body is being shown to the attacker. If instead we move into our shield and into our teammates, then suddenly the angle between the shield and our attacker will prevent that. So let's show this here. So here's Farah, somewhere up here, or Widow, or someone on high ground, and like here's our shield, some distance away, and here's us. So if we move, so here's the sight line, roughly. It's not a perfect line. So here's us as Zen. Then, if we move this way, she still has line of sight on us, right? I agree that the drawing's terrible, but if we move in instead, and I'll cover up the previous dot, suddenly it's blocked by shield, and she can't do anything. So against elevation, it's better to move into our shield than away from danger. So let's actually go with the shield positioning here in a second. So another small issue of this shield placement is you actually kind of want it as an extension of this wall rather than the car. Particularly, you think they're going to be rotating this way. They're going to be rotating this way. So any gap between your natural retreat behind this building and their path of attack means that they can actually abuse this small gap to land damage on you and potentially get a pick. In doing so, it would actually place your shield a little bit further back, which gives you additional breathing room. I think the way they finally break this is Reinhardt has built a shatter. He crosses your shield for the threshold and shatters your entire team. That additional space would be nice. It would also commit most of your team to actually playing behind here, so that when they notice the Rhine charging, they can just naturally move to cover and or spread out in response. Well, right now you kind of locked yourself in between two structures that can't be moved of the car in here. You have no wiggle room laterally, where if instead the shield is here, you can move laterally without having to move, not laterally, widthedly, up and down the screen here. enough of that. These are some minor nitpicks. Zenyatta. I like the Zenyatta kind of watching this. This is like the typical flank position. I don't know if it's necessary with the team here. I do like that it's further back, so it's harder to rush. Alright, so it's like 2 minutes into the game. No one's really used ults on their team. If they've been playing the character since the beginning, you have to assume that they're getting close to ults just naturally by progression and maybe some of the minor damage in. Alright, we get the Junkrat Hoof for some fucking reason over there. So like Discord only lasts 3 seconds. Try not to break line of sight immediately. And if your soldier's going to be dueling here, you might as well just orb your soldier instead of leaving it on your Junkrat. To make it as unfair a fight as possible. I like your conscious decision to do that. See how far up this, like, why are we shielding so far up? What advantage has that given us? Why are we playing spread? We're like playing loose because they haven't done anything in 2 minutes. Like our Junkrat isn't behind shield and is actually kind of split from our team. Our shield has advanced forward, despite them gaining a flanker in Pharah and still having the speed boost rush us potential. If they rush the main tank composition, you definitely want your Junkrat behind to punish them for jumping that shield. And the Zenyatta Discord as well. But I don't really have a problem with Zenyatta's position. Ooh, you heard it. You heard it. Only the Moira dodges this, maybe. Yeah, they just take everyone out. Stolen points. We're not really looking to ult here because no ults are going to recover us being down all these members. Just stolen points. They, for some reason, commit nano boost after a very, very clearly won fight. That's good for us. Alright, we should have already been discussed. Alright, this is over. We can't contest anymore. Swap to the mobility options that we discussed before setup on first point so we can fight second point. And if we do this quickly enough, it's not out of the question that we get to contest as or before the gates open. They used Barrage. They used Nano Boost. They used Hammer Down. I think that's it. They just switched to Tracer. They were running, excuse me, they were running Junkrat before there. So unlikely for them to have that. I don't think D.Va's done too much this game. You might see a beat come out sooner rather than later. Forgot their exact ult charge at this time. We right now don't have anything. We're looking to take a fight early. Alright, retract that. Alright, so we're not actually positioning for this first fight. Our Zenyatta is still kind of hanging on the ground, not able to contribute to anything. Zenyatta needs to join the team and probably take the high ground and just kind of move along with her soldier. That's awkward. See how awkward this Zen positioning is? She can't do anything. Oh, he was moving so linearly too. We definitely could have punished that positioning more. Alright, so like, we're doing like 2 things kind of poorly here. We didn't take an early fight, which is unfortunate. We end up getting staggered a bit. but we're going to continue to stagger here. So you see Hog like basically way out in the fuck middle of nowhere against the enemy team, while we still have one dead in spawn. That's just gonna give them more payload and ult charge for free while we're regrouping, and it might prevent us from regrouping at all if we continue this trend of dying before we regroup. So really, just everyone should just fucking go back to spawn right now. Just go inside the doors, maybe take positioning in the castle, and pray they don't come for you. Like, if they do, you have to retreat even further back, because we can't fight this right now. Alright, they didn't need to pulse bomb. We shouldn't have jumped back into this corner, because now we're caught. Get out, get out, get out. Get out. Get out. We're still regrouping. We don't really want to take this fight, and I think I described in the other video why I don't like this visor coming up. Because everyone can kind of just line of sight it, unless you want to drop for the diva, which will just stagger you. Even if you get the diva. So they drop, yeah, exactly, interesting. Alright, so that is actually a trigger condition to go in, because they are down 2, and we're finally in position to fight. Now that the Hog has switched to diva, he is very close to us, and we can take an advantaged fight. Even if we're even on numbers right now, it won't be once the diva gets here, and we can take this trickle just fine. Good decision to commit now. Alright, we shouldn't need any ults. Don't you ult here, Fuzzbug. Good. Good, no, that's fine. Good chase. Good chase. Yeah, Junkrat can be switched off of, which I think that's what we're going to do. What is good against their comp? So, like, the Tracer vs. Tracer is kind of a wash. I do think that Baby close... I'm just gonna say Baby. I think Baby is a better Tracer than Rez in general. So I'm not too worried about the 1v1 there. Additionally, like, the supports, or Zenyatta is a better help for his Tracer than Ana is, or Lucio is for Rez. So Tracer's not, like, bad here. It doesn't really help against the Pharah whatsoever. It can maybe get the Ana if she's out of position. Shooting Lucio's in general is just fucking miserable. And you have good bomb targets in both of the tanks. And just in general, Tracer's fine against tanks. Not too big of a deal. Roadhog being the exception. What else could be good here? They don't have a great defensive ultimate. They do have this, so I'm not thinking Genji. Reaper here is absolutely useless. Maybe a Pharah of your own wouldn't be too bad, because outside of this Pharah, they don't have too much to contest it. There's no real reason to do that. Tracer just seems safe, which is what I think we end up going. Yep. I don't think McCree would be god-awful either. No, McCree would be pretty bad. You don't have the shield break to get through their 2 tanks, actually start damaging things. A flanker's probably your best bet. Seems a pretty standard modified soldier dive, with the exception of that we're running a more, what was that? Alright, so, like, here's where team is set up. I'd like to see once again Zenyatta to sort of like mirror the soldier's movements, playing a little bit more defensive than him, but always being able to pocket him in the event that he gets dove. Because you're mostly going to be concerned with the tanks and following them in with the dive. And generally, soldier sight lanes are good for Zen. Yes, yeah, she used the last fight. It's not she might be kind of close to it. So this position is kind of aggressive by us too. As Zenyatta at the moment. Hi again, Lakota. How's it going? In that we don't have good retreat paths where we are, And I realized we like swung this way to get a good line of sight on choke, which I don't entirely hate, but I feel like we could have achieved the same sort of sight line and had places to maneuver by like using this ledge, or just finally joining our soldier. See, he naturally went to the back because he assumed you're back here. He doesn't seem to know where you are, and you're not really able to assist him from there. So like we're like spamming down some sightline when we already have trance. There's no need for that. Tracer coming up castle. We're not really communicating ults here in this fight. Although there's no real like predictions from them outside of when and where we need to be careful with hammer down. I think in general. Ooh, we should be moving way the fuck back as Zenyatta. Ooh, we linger for a second. We move forward. Okay, we're pressing up. We have an advantage. I can see why we're starting to press up now. We do have to be a little careful. We noticed that the diva killed our soldier. Even though I don't think we end up seeing her. We should know that she's above us right now and should need to play accordingly. I think we as Zenyatta die because of that. The rest of these guys can get cleaned up. Good, quick call. Don't trance. We move back into that. No reason to do that. That's fine. Oh shit, here they come. Yeah, we don't have to commit to this fight. Once again, we don't have to ult at all this fight. We just have to make sure they don't get the final checkpoint fight one. For this reason, we can take a dry fight here, dying all on payload if need be. Like obviously if you gain an advantage, just start blowing everything, but like you can draw out enemy ultimates because they have to win this fight. But you don't have to win this fight, so you can take a dry fight here, and then actually contest them with all of your ultimates at the end. So right now you don't really want to commit because your trance is here. Not hard commit anyway. See how they're gonna get another fight? Realize that. Alright. So Zenyatta is finally on a high ground, and we abandon it. That's okay. So our orb should be on someone. Just leave it on your Winston, leave it on your Diva. Still no orb, we finally have an orb. Alright, we're saying this is the last fight. Alright, this fight is lost, die on payload. You're not getting across bridge. No way in hell. It's impossible to not get picked. The call is rarely to back up, it's most often die on point. I know you're giving up the ult charge, but like the stagger is so much worse. Because now they can come in and take, they should be pushing up with their tanks and taking anything before the door while leaving people on payload to prevent you from being able to recontest this. Yeah, you can definitely contest still. You're just going to be down 2 people. You still have time. You honestly didn't have to go out yet. You could have given your spawners another second and a half to close their gap. Yep, and it was that sort of like failure of the Winston to go in as late as possible that gets him killed here, and very well could have turned this fight. So now the Zenyatta tried to save him by going this way, and now is out of range for this person. So you see this awful position that Zenyatta has ended up in post her transcendence. Ideally, you would have used that time to fall back. You're not getting out, die on point, or just kill yourself by jumping. The team should already kind of, when you come into a map, and you'll get better at this, you should already have an idea of what sort of comps you want to play, so there's not a discussion as they break the second point, what you should be switching to for third point. This time should be used for switching while they're breaking their door down, for getting general positioning, and discussing what sort of ults they have. Do you know what ults they have? So he's not currently being supported by anyone, which is kind of an issue against a D.Va. One-on-one, the D.Va kind of wins that, especially if he's used any cooldowns, and she has hers. She kind of boosts into him, eats as much of it as possible while the rockets come out, and then guns him down the rest of the way. It's not a great fight for anyone. Oh. Alright, I actually like this position by Zenyatta. It is just unfortunate that the soldier's not going to get help for the most part. I like the choice of leaving it on our D.Va. I don't think there was any real danger here, and we actually move forward to abandon what could have been our cover for this bomb. Okay, we're fine. Not a bad bomb. Our D.Va still has our orb, which is fantastic. Good shit. Now our Winston has it, which is fantastic. So we're doing this thing as Zenyatta again. We're compensating for our aim by moving like up and down towards and away from our target to line up shots, and it's kind of landed us in the middle of fuck nowhere. We could easily do this from like our positioning back on where we dodged the bomb, and I don't think anything would have changed. As a team, we're doing a good job of making sure the payload doesn't get a lot of push, which means that even if we lose this fight, we have probably not enough time for a full regroup, but a decent number of people can respawn, and then we actually get another mini contest at the end here with a decent number of people. Alright, we're winning the fight. We can push up a little bit. Roadhog should not have ulted. It's your bottom right if you care. Unfortunately he drops, but it won't make a difference. Alright, we have trance. If the entire team, so you don't have your main tank, it's a little bit hard to push up, especially since they have their main tank. We have 3 ultimates. There's no reason why we are in any danger of losing this. And the ultimates are very, very good. Trance is hard to beat for any given fight. The only exception for that is on a nade. So what I would like to see is that as they come in on approach, the Junkrat uses Tire and specifically looks to pick this out, because we have both support ults, both of which are dependent on healing, and anti-nade is the only way that they have to prevent this from happening. So Tire should be looking for Ana here. Good stagger. Do we really need to be further up? I don't think it's likely to get punished just because of our numbers advantage. Alright, so we eat a pin. That's fine. Ana's dead. They got a different support. Not ideal, but still fine. We're gonna end up as in a bad position after this transfer. I see our decision. We tried to get good positioning, and generally this is bad. It's just unlucky that we kind of get shattered here. But he was so aggressive that the rest of his team behind him dies. And how did the soldier get here? So the only way the soldier gets here is like during all of that aggression, he ran this way. Right? What was that positioning hoping to accomplish? So while his team used Shatter and Nano, not in that order, but Nano then Shatter, he found that he had enough time to like take a cross-country trek. Like I don't mind coming out of this doorway here for a flank, but it just seems like a weird time to do it when the rest of the team is committing ultimates. The rest of your team's committing ultimates. Is he? No, he's not. So, against this team, there's not much that had to be said about, like, oh, we're going to use this ultimate for this ultimate, because they didn't have those. Your ultimates in general didn't really counter things up until the last point, and they never really built them in time for you. There was no, like, oh, we never announced that they had Shatter. We didn't announce that they're close to Barrage and that we need to be anticipating it, or that Beat is coming out or anything like that. So we need to do some work on ult tracking, but we generally had a good understanding of the map and our win conditions, which is like stick soldier on the high ground and the rest of the people kind of support him as he fires down from above. I would like to see Zenyatta positioning to mirror that a little bit and give him support, because a better team will contest that high ground with more than just a diva on occasion and then a fire spamming from a distance. We staggered ourselves on second point a little bit by not dying on the payload, which is a shame. But generally this was good. We took fights cleanly. We like understood what was necessary in our dive comp to initiate, even though our tanks were a little bit lagging behind. I didn't like our first point defense and what it devolved to, due to I guess just general laziness. But not bad. I don't think it was like we weren't really like super coordinated either, calling out targets. I think although we had a victory and we had like the general sense of what we were supposed to be doing, we just kind of knew game sense wise what we wanted to do, and then we out mechanics them with our tracer and our soldier for the most part, and just force this team to kind of like collapse over and over and over again. You won't be able to do that against every team. I do want to hear better comms later on. And I'm going to pause here for now, because it's 2 in the morning where I am, and I'll continue with the rest of it. I'll continue with the rest of it probably tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon. Thank you.